first day we discussed about our natural calamities, the acts of God. And then we discussed the triple level causation in all events. Then yesterday we discussed about miracles. Does God manifest in supernatural visions, paranormal visions? And today we are going to discuss further about destiny, the concept of fate and free will. And today I will also discuss about some other miscellaneous topics briefly in terms of the effects of religion on society. So first I'll talk about the concept of destiny. We have discussed this quite a bit in our first session, but I would like to focus on one specific aspect of it. There is fate and there is free will. So the word fate can mean many things. Fate can mean what happens to us. It can also mean destiny. So now the question is that if our future is destined, then do we really have free will? And if we have free will, the question will be, how free is our free will? So if I say my free will is free, but how free actually is my free will? So how much are we controlled by factors beyond us? How much are our decisions in our hands? So the connection with the movie is not very explicit over here. But in general, one of the ideas that is there in the movie is, in one of the interviews, the talk shows, Kanji Bhai says that religion makes people helpless. Religion, dharma logo ko lachar bana deta hai. So how exactly may religion make a person miserable, helpless, and why it actually is a perversion of religion? That's what we will explore today. So the first and most important point to recognize, and which is easy to recognize also, is that the results of our work are not in our hands entirely. When a student works in an exam and wants some result, so at that time, certainly the student's endeavors play a significant role. But at the same time, are the students' endeavors, do they play the decisive role? Do they play an exclusive role? We know that there are so many other factors. The student may endeavor very sincerely, but at the time of exam, he or she may fall sick. Or at the time of the corrections, if we have a human checker, the human checker may be in a bad mood and may assess improperly. Even computers can make mistakes. So one thing we learn very easily if we look at life, that the results of what we do are not in our hands alone. So we are not the decisive or the exclusive fashioners or makers of our results. Exclusive means only, and decisive means that is the most important factor. So we see this in the arena of sports. So in the arena of sports, we see that sometimes even the best of players are not able to play well. Sometimes the best batsman who is so good at batting and misses a straight ball and finds his middle stump knocked over. And when something like this happens, often it's said that this batsman is out of touch, is out of form right now. Now, if we ask that batsman, no batsman would want to be out of form. So, what exactly happens when a person says that is out of form? That just means that the person is not able to perform the way he or she would like to perform. So, what causes this? So, this is actually caused by factors that are not necessarily or entirely in our control. Now, almost all sports stars, cricketers included, have their own superstitions. Now, for example, there was a famous cricketer who would have, whenever he would be playing, he would have a handkerchief in his right pocket, and the handkerchief would keep it in such a way that 1/3 of it is coming out and 2/3 of it is inside. And it would be a particular red colored handkerchief. And whenever the match would be not doing well, he would just look at the handkerchief. Is it properly positioned? And that he considered to be a good luck charm. There was a famous tennis player who would have a ring in only one of his ears. And he would consider that to be a good luck charm. There was another cricketer, he had an even more queer idiosyncrasy. He believed that in the pavilion, they would have washrooms, the restrooms. So it was his belief that all the restrooms, their lid should be covered. So before he would go out to play, he would go into the restroom and make sure that all the lids would be covered. And he would feel that if any of these are not covered properly, then that would be an inauspicious sign and he would not be able to perform well. So now we may laugh at these beliefs, but many of those people who have these beliefs, they are in their own way superstar performers from the material perspective. And it's not that they don't have talent, it's not that they have not delivered on their talent. And what these superstitious beliefs indicate is, the specifics may feel laughable, but actually the implication of that is they all recognize that in the sporting arena, there is something which is beyond our control. And that which is beyond our control plays a crucial role in determining the result. So in some way, that which is beyond our control, if we can make it favorable to ourselves, if we can make it go right for us, then we will get the results. So there is every individual is shaped by one's belief system. What do we mean by the belief system? Researchers have found that how we feel about something determines not only our mental attitude, but also our physical endeavor about it. And it's easy to understand. If I am coming to give a class, and if I am very discouraged, I am very diffident, then that will not only be internally creating tension and turmoil within me, that will naturally express itself externally also. I'll not be able to think clearly, I'll not be able to speak clearly. So, this is from our day-to-day experience, very easy to understand. So now, all of us, we know that there are some things beyond our control, and we want to try to see what is it that we can do to appease that which is beyond our control, to make that favorable. So now, even if a person is an atheist and the person doesn't believe specifically in God, so most of the sports persons, they may not believe in God, but they have some idea of some good luck charm, some amulet, some kind of belief. So these beliefs indicate one important thing, that there is something beyond our power, which plays a very important role in the favorable result. So now what exactly is that? So now when we work, the result, it comes by our endeavor and by the arrangements that are beyond our control. So there are two schools of thought traditionally that have been there. One is called Karmavad and the other is Daivavad. Karmavad means, Vad is a school of thought or a logical argument. Karmavad is the idea that everything is in our hands. That by my karma, I can get whatever results I want. And the other idea is Daivavad. Daivavad is the idea that everything is destined, nothing is in my hands. And some people say, "Meri kismat hi phuti hai, main kya karu abhi?" So some people feel like that. So Karmavad and Daivavad. These are actually, if we consider pendulum, they are the two extremes of the pendulum of human imagination. Now, to think that everything is in my hands is actually a sign of arrogance and ignorance. To think that everything is in my hands is a sign of arrogance and ignorance. Arrogance because I think that everything is under my control, and a little experience of life will show me that everything is not in my control. Certainly my efforts do play a significant role, but they don't determine the result entirely. On the other hand, if I say nothing is in my control, fatalism, this in English is called as fatalism. So fatalism is the idea that everything is determined by fate, nothing is in our hands. Now this is a extremely pessimistic idea. Nothing is in my hands, then why should I do anything at all? And we do see that our endeavors make a difference. So now to understand how this works, I'll consider 2-3 examples. First is, now here there are two factors. Now let's take the example of a cricket match. Now sometimes in a cricket match, the player himself may not be able to perform well. And we say that the player is out of touch at that time. But in other cases, the player may perform extremely well and still some factors come up by which the person is not able to get the result. The player performs very well, but somehow just when the team is winning the match, rains come at that time. Or the player is performing very well and somehow at that time the umpire gives a wrong decision. Or the player is performing very well, but the other players perform so pathetically and this batsman is batting very well, but he just runs out of partners. So that means what we are talking about here is two factors. So that is, sometimes our own endeavors and our own efforts are poor because of factors beyond our control. And like a batsman is not able to play well only when he wants to. The other is, the person plays well and the person plays what could normally be a winning performance, but even then results don't come out. So now let's look at these two. Now when we talk about fate, the effects of the destiny that are there on us, they affect us in two ways. Actually, destiny affects us internally as well as externally. Internally means that we all find that we go through moods. Sometimes we feel very inspired to do something, and sometimes we feel very discouraged, very demotivated. Now why does this happen? At one level, our moods are because of the modes. Now the modes is a concept which not many people know about, but moods is something everyone knows about. So moods are that, I feel very irritated today. I feel very lazy today. So people have different moods. So the Bhagavad Gita explains that there is something called as the gunas, the modes, the 3 modes of material nature. So these are subtle psychological forces that shape the interaction between matter and consciousness. The modes are subtle psychological forces that shape the interaction between matter and consciousness. Without going into too many technicalities, the point here is that our own internal feelings are not in our control. And often they run amok. And they create agitation, irritation, frustration for us. And they can demotivate us or they can remotivate us, depending on how those feelings go. So now, we all experience these moods, but why do these moods come about? So actually, even our moods are consequences of our past karma. See this, you remember I discussed about how the soul is situated in 3 coverings. Does anyone remember the 3 coverings? Sorry? Okay, somebody can raise the hand? Yeah? Subtle and gross. Okay, that's one kind of, that's the bodily covering. But I talked about 3 other coverings. Yes, Mataji? Okay. Yes, the child in the womb, that's compared to ignorance. Yeah. Okay. That is talking about 3 degrees of coverings. I'm talking about something different. 3 degrees of covering is, it's lower species and higher species. But I'm talking about how all living beings are situated in 3 coverings. They're like 3 concentric circles in which all of us are situated. Yes? Spiritual circle? Oh, that was talking about the different levels of consciousness. Yes, that is true. That is levels of consciousness. I am talking about something slightly different here. Remember I talked about how Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We say what are the three times Shanti, because what are three circles? So Adi Atmik, that is circle of the body and the mind. Now these create some problems for us. These give some pleasures for us. Both are there. Then there is Adi Bhautik. So the psychophysical circle, the social circle, and the environmental circle. So these three give us three different kinds of kleshas. So now, now the situations that we encounter within all these three circles are determined by our past karma. That means in my life, if I have some person who is very disagreeable, now why is that person there in my life? That's because there is some past karma and that person is the instrument by which I am getting the past karmic reactions. Or if I am born and brought up in an area where the weather is very unsuitable for me. Now why is it that I am situated over there? I could have been born anywhere else, I could have been living anywhere else. That particular circumstance is because of our karma. So similarly, the psychophysical, that means the kind of moods that we get in our mind, they are also the result of our past karma. Now of course, in some cases, we ourselves also contribute to this. See, when I say, in all these three cases, in first case if I say that there is some person who is very disagreeable, now it's often that there will be some people who are disagreeable anyway, but often we also can make the disagreeable people more disagreeable or less disagreeable. So our behavior also contributes to it. Similarly, with respect to our moods, if I am feeling lazy and I go in comfortable bed and switch off the lights and then lie down and pull a blanket over my face, and then I wonder why I am feeling so sleepy and lazy. No, I am contributing to that, isn't it? So similarly with the other feelings which may get, we also contribute to the kind of moods that we have. But in some cases, even without any provocation from us, still we get certain feelings. I want to be enthusiastic, I want to work, but I feel so bored, I feel so apathetic. I don't feel like doing anything at all. So when these kind of feelings come, we understand that they are also the result of our past karma. Now what does Krishna tell about such feelings? In the 14th chapter, when he talks about the three modes of material nature, then Arjuna asks the question, how can I transcend these modes? And 14.22, 23, 24, 25, Krishna describes how to transcend. So the first thing he says is, recognize that actually our feelings are not our feelings. What does it mean? Our feelings are not our feelings means that actually many of our feelings are just past stimulations that have come. They'll be there temporarily and they will go away. They often have got nothing to do with our core values, our core aspirations. Prakasham cha pravrittim cha mohameva cha pandava na dveshti sampravrittani na nivrittani kankshati udasina vadasinam gunairyo na vichalyate gunavartante tyeva yovatishtati nengate. So Krishna describes prakasham cha pravrittim cha. Prakash, illumination, that is the characteristic of the mode of goodness. Sometimes we feel that as if we are having very clear thinking, very sound, solid thinking we have. Prakasham cha pravrittim cha. Pravritti means I want to do this, I want to do that. Pravritti means the desire for activity. That is characteristic of the mode of passion. I have to do this, I have to do this. Kuch karke dikhana hai. So that zeal we have sometimes. And then mohameva cha pandava. So many people are doing something, people are running, let them run. Why bother? We just feel like not doing anything. Mohameva cha pandava. So Krishna says, when these kind of various feelings come, nadveshti sampravrittani, when they arrive, don't be resentful about them. Nanivrittani kankshati, if they go away, don't crave for them. Then how should one be situated? Udasina vadasinam. Udasina, stay as if one is detached. Gunairyo na vichalyate, understanding that these are just the effects of the modes. Gunavartantyeva yovatishtati na ingate na ingate. one who is situated on a spiritual platform is not disturbed. It's like as soon as we go out of the temple, we will be assailed by hoardings from various sides. Now, all these different hoardings are put up by various companies who want things from us. Now, earlier, say, before we became introduced to Krishna consciousness and realized the spiritual values of life, these advertisements might have comprised our dreams. These are the things I want. Now, our values have changed. But just because our values have changed doesn't necessarily mean that the advertisements are going to change. The advertisements will go on, but what happens is we stop taking those advertisements very seriously. You remember yesterday I talked about how doubt is a function of intelligence. So we understand, okay, these advertisements, they don't mean a big deal. They are just false promises. There was a social critic who said there are lies, there are bigger lies, and there are advertisements. So that's how it is. And the characters of Kali Yuga described in the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is Satyatve Dharshtyam Hi. That anyone who can speak the most audaciously, whoever is the most audacious will consider it to be truthful. So even if there is no truth in an advertisement, just put it again and again and again and again and again. Just be audacious about it. This is the mobile which has the best connection. Now it may actually have the worst connection. You just say again and again and again and again, and people, oh, this must have the best connection. People start believing it. So the point which I am making is, I am comparing the external hoardings with the internal thought patterns of the mind. See, just as there are external advertising agencies, so similarly, there are internal advertising agencies. What are those? Those are lust, anger, greed, envy, pride and illusion. So now what has happened is that our values have changed. We want to value spiritual things more, and material things we want to use according to our spiritual values. But that doesn't necessarily mean our internal thought patterns will automatically change. So now for example, if we talk about lust, or if we talk about greed, or we talk about anger, so let's consider anger. Now, is anger a thing or a feeling? Is anger a thing or a feeling? Now what do I mean by a thing or a feeling? That means, now suppose I get angry, then I am feeling anger at that time. So at that time, naturally, anger is a feeling. Anger is a feeling that we sometimes experience. But at the same time, we also see that some people have greater vulnerability to anger than others. Some people are more short-tempered than others. So if anger is just a feeling, then why is it that that feeling comes more in some people and less in some people? So actually, anger is a feeling, definitely. That means a feeling that we get occasionally. But along with that, anger is also a thing. It is not a thing like this table or this mic. It is subtle. What does it mean? That actually speaking, when we choose to cultivate certain feelings, for example, whenever I feel angry and I let myself become angry at that time, then the kind of thoughts and actions that I accept, they create certain patterns in my mind. They create certain grooves in my mind. And suppose now water is flowing, and now if water just has to flow this way, the floor is flat, then water will just flow in a linear way, whichever direction it can go. But if I've got a groove over here, then the flow of the water becomes much quicker, much faster. So, like that, when we choose to act according to certain feelings repeatedly, then certain marks, not marks in literal physical sense like colorings, but in a subtle sense, they are created in our mind. And when they are created in our mind, then those feelings come to us more and more. So that's why in the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, actually 3.36 to 43, Arjuna asks about lust, and Krishna answers how lust originates and how it is to be controlled and conquered. So at that time, Krishna talks about lust as being both a thing. So he says that it's a thing which is situated in some places. Indriyani mano buddhir asyadhishthana muchyate etair vimohayatyesha jnanamavritti dehinam. So in 3.40, Krishna says that lust is situated in the intelligence, in the mind and in the senses. Indriyani mano buddhir. So now if it is situated in particular places, that means it's a thing. It's situated somewhere. But along with that, also he says, don't become lusty. He says, evam buddhe param buddhva samstabhyatmanam atmanah jahishatrum mahabaho kamarupam durasadam. So just conquer this enemy of lust by situating yourself on the spiritual platform. Now what this means is, don't become lusty. If you can situate yourself on the spiritual platform, you won't succumb to lust. So what he is meaning over here is that the lust itself is a thing, is situated in the mind. But it is up to us whether we accept those feelings when they come to us. See, now I'll explain. Now, I was giving the example of the advertising, the hoardings. Now if the hoardings are not there, we may not, if there is a new car that is advertised, there are hoardings, just along one road there are 25 hoardings of that. Then what happens? Just by seeing it again and again, the desire comes in the mind. Now if the hoardings are not there itself, it's not that we may not have the desire at all. We still have the desire. But the hoardings provoke the desire further. So when we act lustily or we act greedily, at that time we sort of create hoardings in our own mind. And then those feelings get stimulated more. So in this sense, lust, anger, greed, they are both things and feelings. So why are certain people more prone to become angry? Because in the past they have indulged in anger more, and because they have indulged in anger more, the guru has been created. So I give an example of a guru, the other is of the hoardings. So those hoardings have been created, and that's why they get allured more in those directions. So now when I said that by our past karma, our external situations and our internal situations are created, that means our moods. So some people may feel very lazy sometimes, some people may feel very irritable other times. So why are these people have this kind of natures? That means that kind of hoardings are there in the mind, and that's why irritable means whenever there is a problem in my life, I want to find somebody as a scapegoat and blast at that person. Because of you this happened, because of you that happened, because of you. And I snap at others, I shout at others. So now why is because I have indulged in that earlier, and because I have indulged in again and again, that tendency has become ingrained in my mind. And when a problem comes, at that time it's not necessary that I have to snap at others and blame others. But because that's what I have done, that's what I am tempted to do now. It almost becomes like my second nature to do that. So now that means the question which I was discussing is, how free is our free will? So actually speaking, we have when greed provokes us. When I have a good TV with me, if I need a TV, but then I find the neighbor has a better TV, more fashionable brand. Then if I think about, oh, I have this TV, and if only I had that TV, I had that TV, I had that TV. The more I contemplate on it, I am giving fuel for the greed. And then the greed will go further, grow more, and then it will become intolerable for me. So the point here is that some people are more prone to greed, some people are less prone to greed. Why is that? That is by our past karma. So by our past karma, we may be situated in a part of the city where there are a lot of hoardings. By our past karma, we may be situated in a rural area where there are practically no hoardings. So why are we situated in an area where there are more temptations, more provocations, or less provocations? That's why past karma. Similarly, internally also, some people have much more provocations and agitations in their heads. Some people have less. And accordingly, we face greater or lesser obstacles internally on the spiritual path. So the extent and the nature of the obstacles that we face on the spiritual path are determined by our past karma. Extent means quantity, nature means quality. The quality and quantity of the obstacles that we face internally. Now these obstacles are not necessary only for the spiritual path. Our moods can affect us even on material advancement. Some students, they want to study, but somehow when they take the book open, they just don't feel like studying. Now why are the feelings so rebellious? So it's because of our own past, the way we have cultivated our habits, the way we have acted in the past, accordingly our inner mindsets are created. But the wonderful thing about this is that these mindsets are not irreversible. They are not permanent. They are changeable. They are temporary. How does that work? As I said, when there is a groove, then the water naturally will flow in a particular direction. But so now if I want the water to flow in that way, but if this floor is sloping in this way, then what I will have to do is, I will have to exert some extra force. So naturally the water would flow this way, but then I have to have some cloth, some some sweeper, something by which I can push the water in the other direction. And I have to apply some extra force. So in general, whenever we talk about any kind of self-improvement, there is an implicit understanding that there are two selves within us. Two selves means that there is a part of me which wants to stay as I am, and there is a part of me which wants to improve. So there are these two. So to put in more blunt language, there is a part of me which needs a kick in the back, and there is a part of me which is ready to give the kick in the back. So there are these two parts. Now what are these two parts? It's a mystery. The Vedic scriptures describe that there is the mind and there is the intelligence. There is the higher self, there is the lower self. So now, in general, when do people change? Most of us, in physics, there is the law of inertia. Inertia means that the way we are, way a thing is, the thing tends to stay like that only. And if it has to change, then we have to put some force on it. So all of us also have an inertia. So generally people change when the cost of staying as we are becomes more than the cost of changing. See, we do internally a credit debit calculation constantly. That means if I just want to be lazy and sleep, now at that time, if it's just a normal day and I'm a student, I have exams coming up, but the exams are after 3 months, then I can just keep sleeping. Because at that time, the cost of changing, waking up and doing studies, it's too much. But if I'm a student and my exam is today, and I have a lot of studies to do, that time, if I don't study, I'm ruined today. So what happens at that time? The cost of changing, the cost of not changing becomes far greater than the cost of changing. That the consequences, if I don't change, will be far more serious than the consequences, if the trouble which I'll have to go through to change. So now, actually speaking, the internal obstacles that we face on the spiritual path are there, and to change them requires an exertion of inner willpower, exertion of inner force. So how do we get that inner force? That inner force we can get by our efforts, but more than that we can get it by God's efforts, by God's grace rather. So let me explain this. Now right now I'm not going to talk too much about the external obstacles, because they are there and we have to deal with them. So when I'm talking about how free is our free will, it's implicit that it's not entirely free. When I'm sitting here, I cannot suddenly start flying in the sky. I don't have that much free will because my body creates certain limitations for me. Yes, if I have a particular a financial level, if my earnings are of a particular level, and I can travel in one kind of car, it's not suddenly that I can purchase a very posh car and I can move around in that. That may require changes in external situations. So we recognize that externally also we are limited by certain things. But right now we are looking at how we are internally limited by our past. The topic was how free is our free will? How much does fate, how does fate leave room for free will, and how does free will leave room for fate? So now imagine that there is a, now this is wall. Imagine if there were nails over here, and very closely spaced nails, an array of nails, say 20 nails vertically, 20 nails horizontally, 50 nails vertically. Just an array of nails were there. And then they're very, very small, very closely spaced. The space between them is very less. And then I throw a marble from above. Now normally, the space between them is such that the marble can just pass through it. Now because the space is very little, the marble may fall on a nail. Now when the marble falls on the nail, the marble can fall on the left side or on the right side thereafter. Now, if everything happens just by random, then sometimes the marble may fall on left, sometimes the marble may fall on right. And by the time it comes down through all those 50, the array of 50 nails, it will more or less, if we leave it to probability, it will be more or less in the same vertical direction in which it was on top. So it started from here, sometimes it went here, sometimes it went here, sometimes it went here, sometimes it went here. 50-50 probability would be there approximately. And it would more or less maintain the same trajectory. Now when the marble is falling like this, because there are so many nails over there, the marble cannot suddenly just take a different trajectory, and if it is coming like this, it can't suddenly go like that over there. But at the same time, when the marble falls, if at each time the marble moves rightwards, it can fall towards the left, it can fall towards the right, but falls towards the right, falls towards the right, falls towards the right, falls towards the right, falls towards the right. Now by the time it comes down the array of 50 marbles, it will be at a significantly different position if at each juncture it took a right turn, right turn, right turn, as compared to if it had just randomly come down. So what does this array of nails and marble represent? Actually, the array of marbles represents the inner obstacles that we face. And the array of nails represents the inner obstacles, and the marble is our consciousness. So we leave it to random. Now if I want to overcome some habit, say I have a habit of overeating, and I want to avoid that. So now if I just leave it to myself, sometimes I will overeat, sometimes I will not overeat. Then what will happen? Over a period of time, in general, I will just be the way I am. So I won't change. But if I consciously choose, so each time the marble moves in one direction, one direction, one direction. Now remember, the marble, if it is here, from here, it cannot just jump here at that level, because it is limited by the nails that are there. But by consciously moving, small steps, what happens is at the end, the difference is dramatic. So actually, the marble's progress is evolutionary, but the result is revolutionary. So each step, the change that is there, revolutionary, little changes there. But the difference in the end result is revolutionary. So same way, when we want to practice spiritual life, so all of us have free will. And whenever we face any tempting situation, whenever we face any situation where our past mindsets create certain behavioral patterns or make certain behavioral patterns natural for us. So at that time, if we consciously resolve, okay, this way I'll move this way, I'll move this way, I'll move this way. So every time I take food, I'll plan, I'll take this much, not this much, not this much, not this much, or whatever it may be. I don't want to spend too much time watching TV. whatever. So I decide, so each time I take a step in the right direction, what is happening? The trajectory is changing. The trajectory is changing. So, actually speaking, our even our inner conditions are changeable. We get a particular card. So it's like when a person is playing a game of cards. Now, all of us, in one sense, destiny gives us the set of cards that we play with. But it is our free will which determines how we play with the set of cards that we are given. Some people may get a very good hand. Some people may get a poor hand. But still, if a person plays expertly, even with a poor hand, the person can get a good result. Somebody else, even with a good hand, if the player plays carelessly, the player may end up losing the game also. So, that means some of us may, even from an internal point of view, may be given a bad hand. In the sense that we have made too many conditionings, we have made too many irritations from the mind, and too many troubles. But, it is up to us to play. And we have room. So, we make choices at practically every moment. Some choices are very important, some choices are not so important. But every choice makes a difference. So actually speaking, in general, when we want to make a change in any way in our life, so the idea that religion will make us helpless indicates that there is a misconception that actually nothing is in my hands. Everything is in the control of God. But that is not the teaching of any religion at all. Now, all the religions that are there in the world, all the scriptures that are there in the world, they tell us that there are certain things we should do and certain things which we should not do. They are called as prescriptions and proscriptions. So, prescriptions are do's, proscriptions are don'ts. Now, if we were entirely controlled, then there would be no meaning to these prescriptions and proscriptions. Because if nothing is in our hands, if our entire behavior is entirely controlled, then what is the meaning in God telling us through scriptures, do this and don't do this? Because it's not in our hands. We are going to act in particular ways only. So the very fact that scriptures contain do's and don'ts indicates that we do have free will. And by acting according to scriptures, what are we doing? We are actually tapping the grooves that God has provided. What do I mean by the grooves that God has provided? Remember I mentioned the grooves? So if there is a passageway for water to go this way, it will just flow this way. So the scriptural guidelines that are given, the rules that are given in scriptures, they are like grooves which take us towards God. So when we chant 16 rounds, or when we take darshan of the deities, when we study the scriptures, what are we doing? We are tapping the God-given grooves which will take our consciousness towards God. So in this way, by going along, by doing these things which are recommended in the scriptures, we create a facility, an arrangement within our mind for our thoughts to go towards God. And the more the thoughts go towards God, the more they go towards good things, and then we are able to we have better thoughts and function better in life. So, how free is our free will? It depends on how much we use it, how we use it. So, the more we use it properly, our free will become more and more and more. The less we use it properly, that means every time some impulse comes along and we act according to that impulse, then we will become weaker and weaker in the exercise of our free will. So, just like when there is an addict. Now, what happens in the case of an addiction? Actually, when the addict starts off, at that particular time, the addict initially maybe has a desire. Okay, let me explore, what is this? Let me smoke once, let me drink once, let me take some drugs once. But every time a person indulges in that particular activity, a groove in the mind is created. And then the thoughts go faster and faster towards that. And then over a period of time, it may appear as if it has become irresistible. But, as I said, this whole thing is not irreversible. It is reversible, not just in the negative sense that we can change the negative thought patterns that we have, but it's changeable in the sense that also we can create positive thought patterns. So some people, we may find that they are very atheistic. So now they seem to have some agenda against God only. So, prabhavanti ugra karmana kshayaya jagato hitaha. It appears some people are born for the condemnation of God. They think it is their mission in life to condemn God. Now what has happened in such people? They have got certain experiences. Those experiences scarred them mentally. And then the atheistic thought that are there, the atheistic tendencies that are there, they have become stronger and stronger in them. And that's why anything that they see, they interpret in atheistic terms. Anything and everything that they see, just see the bad out of it. So, now on the other hand, some people may have very spiritual attitude. So, why does this happen? It depends on the kind of thoughts that we have fed in our mind earlier. So, for example, now, suppose somebody is a practicing devotee and then the devotee falls sick and the devotee dies somehow. Now some atheists may say, okay, this devotee fell sick and devotee died. Hey, where was God? Why did not God protect him? And actually there is no God. The very fact that somebody who devoted himself or herself to God died means there is no God. Now somebody else could see it. Actually this person, by one's own past karma, how long we live in a particular body is more or less fixed. This person was supposed to die, but is so fortunate that while he was in this life itself, and the person got an opportunity to come to God, connected oneself with God, and then with that connection established, then left the body. Now that connection which is established, that is an eternal asset, and that will continue on lifetime after lifetime. The same event, depending on the kind of attitude that we have developed through the past, that we can interpret it differently. So, now I will make one last point and then we can have further question answers. So, the scriptures tell us that when we want to change ourselves, there are two aspects to the inner change. One is conviction and the other is commitment. So conviction is the inner acceptance that, okay, this is good, this is bad, this is the way I want to be, this is the way I don't want to be. So when the conviction is there internally, then the commitment comes. Commitment means doing it. So conviction means deciding this is good, this is wrong, and not just deciding in terms of just saying it, but actually feeling internally. This is what I want to do. This is what I don't want to do. So, on the other hand, commitment means now I have made a point. This is what I am going to do, and let me start doing it. So, often we feel that my willpower is not very strong. I decide to do things, but I'm just not able to do it. Actually, more often than not, the problem is not in our willpower. The problem is something more fundamental. That is not our willpower, it is our vision power. Vision power means what? Willpower is about doing things. Vision power means vision is seeing. So, before we decide that, okay, this is what I am going to do, this is what I am not going to do, now we have to ask, am I really convinced that I want to do this, I don't want to do this? So generally, for example, when the scriptures tell us that material things cannot make us happy, then when we hear this, there is a part of us which secretly disbelieves it. It's not true. Things can make me happy. So many people are happy, I'll become happy also. So when there is lack of inner conviction, then that lack of inner conviction sabotages us internally. You know what is a sabotage? In a war is there, that time two enemies are going to come and fight. Both of them have got their fighter tanks. And now when it's a fair fight, both of them will come right each in front of each other and fight. But the enemy can send some spies, and then the spies actually put some bombs right under the enemy fire tank only. And then before the fire tank can go and fight, the fire tank explodes. So then that is a sabotage. That means before the war can happen itself, the efforts for war are disrupted. The arrangements for war are disrupted. So actually speaking, often we feel that when I try to do something, I am not able to do it because I don't have enough willpower. But the problem is often not with the willpower. The problem is with the underlying conviction. See, willpower means commitment. Okay, I decide to do it, but I'm not able to do it. But it's not that we decide to do it and we're not able to do it. Actually, we are indecisive about the decision itself. That means we are internally not convinced that I want to do it. So that's why it's very important, if we want to exercise our free will, to refresh our convictions. What do I mean by refresh our convictions? Refreshing our convictions means that, okay, if this is what I want to do, then why do I want to do it? So then I have to have some reasons for it. And I write down those reasons. I look at those reasons again. So every time when we refresh those convictions, that means at that time we are giving ourselves the inner boost to be able to act externally. See, what determines our actions is not just our capacity to do those actions, it is also our desire to do those actions. For example, there is a person who has good enough muscles where the person can lift up a weight. But if the person doesn't feel, why do I take the trouble to lift up the weight? Then I will not lift up the weight. So what I need is not only the muscles to lift up a weight, but I also need to lift up the weights. So I have to have that conviction. So when we come in the association of devotees and study scripture, in a sense, what are we doing? We are building our underlying conviction. Once the conviction is built, then the commitment will come. Shanai shanairu paramed buddhya dhriti gruhitaya atma samstham manah kritva nakinchidapi chintayet. In 6.24 in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, Shanai shanairu paramed, shanai, gradually, step by step. Buddhya dhriti gruhitaya. Buddhya dhriti gruhitaya means intelligence sustained by conviction. With intelligence sustained by conviction, what should you do? Bring the mind under control. Atma samstham manah kritva nakinchidapi chintayet. Bring the mind under control, do not let it go anywhere else. So, if we refresh our convictions regularly, we will be able to rejuvenate our commitments. What I want to do, I have to keep reminding myself, why do I want to do this? If I keep reminding myself regularly why I want to do it, that will give us the inner motivation, the inner fuel by which we will be able to do it. Otherwise, as I said, there is a higher self, there is a lower place. There is a part of us which wants to become better, and there is a part of us which wants to stay as it is. So now, at some time in the part of us which wants to become better is stronger, at that time we move forward. But then after some time, the part which doesn't want to be improved, doesn't want to take the trouble to change, that can come and sabotage, put a bomb underneath and just remove our convictions. So that's how when it happens, then we lose the opportunity, the impetus to change ourselves. So to the extent we strengthen our convictions, our free will become more and more free. So, when in the Nazi Inquisition Nazi camps, when the Germans were sentencing were sending the Jews to the gas chambers. So, how did that actually happen? And actually, this has been studied. It's not that all Germans were evil, but practically all the Germans at that time participated, consented, either directly or indirectly, in the killing of lakhs and lakhs of Jews in the gas chambers. So how did that happen? Actually, it was a gradual process of desensitization. Desensitization means, for example, when the Jews were sent out to the gas chambers, now what they would do is, they would have some soothing music going on. So not all the times, but sometimes. So what would happen? The music would create a sense of comfort. And a sense of comfort is there, and people just become lulled into complacency, and bang! And then you put in gas chambers and you kill. Similarly, when Hitler came to power, so it was not that suddenly he set up gas chambers, they started sending the Jews to the gas chambers. For example, if in India, if somebody starts labeling this particular community is evil, and let us kill all people of that community. Now, the other people will not agree. There will be an uproar against that. But how it worked was, first they said, actually these people are evil. Why? Because they did this, they did this, they did this, they did this. And then slowly the propaganda went on. When something went wrong, when the Jew children were attacked, when this has happened, that happened, then over a period of time, people, actually they have done so much bad. This is what should happen to them. So, suppose in the school there were some Jew children, the other children came and ganged up and bet the Jew child. Why? For no reason except the child is a Jew. So what would happen is, everybody say, you are a Jew, that's what you deserve. And that it started, and then if there was a Jew criminal, somebody was accused of a crime, you are a Jew, you must be a criminal only. And the person would not be given a fair trial, the person would be punished more. And as this labeling became more and more, first there was beating in schools, then there was beating up in prison cells, and then there was overall total takeover, where, it just because the person was Jew, the person was considered to be worthless enough to be sent to a gas chamber. So similarly, our moral values which are there, we don't lose them overnight. We lose them by a gradual process of desensitization. Desensitization means that when we start off on a particular course of action, it's not that when the person starts smoking, the person thinks, I am going to become a chain smoker. Nobody thinks like that. But there is a gradual desensitization that happens. First I take one, then one is no big deal, nothing happened, then I took 2, then I take 5, then I take 10, and then I can't live without it. So what happens is, when we study scriptures regularly, then the scriptures present us with the right standards. And then when this desensitization starts happening, what happens in our current culture, materialism is so rampant. In fact, there was always good people, there were always sinful people throughout history. But in modern society, sin is glamorized as fashionable. Sin is glamorized as if it is fashionable. In movies, when there are sexually implicit scenes, they are called as bold scenes. Actually, it's not bold scenes, they're shameless scenes. But now when the word uses bold, who doesn't want to be bold? Maybe it's just how the values are shaped by the language. The values are shaped by the vocabulary. Now in the future, now people who are sexually explicit, they are called bold. Then in the future, people who wear modest dresses, they will be called as cowards. Who knows? And then who wants to be a coward after that? So what happens is, the society gradually desensitizes us. And when we become desensitized, what happens is our moral values, our moral conscience becomes deadened. And even when we start doing wrong things, we don't understand it only. And suddenly, what happened? I was like that, how did I become like this? So because there was desensitization that was happening, and there was no reorientation that was happening. So when we come in the association of devotees and we study scriptures, then this desensitization is going to happen inevitably, because we live in a materialistic culture. But then when we come in the association of devotees, there is a resensitization. We become resensitive. This is right, this is wrong. We become insensitive, desensitive, but we become resensitive again. So in general, when we make some resolves also, often we find that we are thrown off track. I want to do a particular thing, but suddenly I go off track. But the point is, a devotee is defined not by how the devotee falls, but by how the devotee rises. We'll all fall, but how we rise. When a plane is going, say, from Mumbai to Calcutta, actually if you ask pilots, 90% of the time the plane is off track. 90% of the time. How is that? Actually speaking, although there is a clear path known from Mumbai to Calcutta, the environmental conditions, the clouds, the atmosphere is such that a straight linear path can never be taken. So if 90% of the time the plane is off track, then how does the plane reach the destination? It's because the pilot is consciously bringing the plane back on track. If you see the person is driving a car, sometimes if you look at when a person is driving, if the road is smooth and there's not much traffic, the driver doesn't seem to be doing much. He's just sitting there and just little bit moving a wheel this way, little bit moving the wheel this way. It's a very comfortable thing to do. But, it's not so easy. If the driver goes to sleep, then many people will go to a permanent sleep.
Isn't it? So what does the driver have to do? See, the vehicle by default will go off track. Now, if the person is not holding on to the steering wheel and turning it around, by default it will go off track. What does the driver do is bring it back on track, bring it back on track, bring it back on track. So similarly, by nature, there is the lower self within us, which will take us off track, which will take us off track again and again and again. So what we have to do is, when we go off track, bring ourselves back on track. Don't be surprised or irritated or dejected when we go off track. Expect it. That's what's going to happen. Expect it. We are going to go off track. And what do we do when we go off track? Bring ourselves back on track. Just because we have gone off track doesn't mean that we are useless or hopeless or incorrigible or that we don't have willpower. No, it is the very nature that we will go off track, but we have the capacity. As soon as we realize I've gone off track, let me bring me on track again. So what gets the plane from its starting point to the ending point is the pilot's constant intent focus. Okay, this is where I want to go. The plane goes off track, bring it back on track. Goes off track, bring it back on track. So similarly, we shouldn't become discouraged. When I come to the temple, I get such nice thoughts, I feel so good. But as soon as I go out, all sorts of peculiar thoughts, nasty thoughts start coming in my mind. Am I really becoming a devotee? Am I really changing? Am I being a better human being? We may get doubts like that. But actually, those other thoughts may come, we bring them back again. We bring them back again. And in that way, we will improve. But this will lead to improvement, not just in spiritual standards in terms of our coming closer to God. It will also lead to material improvement because we will be able to tap our talents better. Now, when we have greater control over our feelings, then we can tap our abilities better and perform better. So in that way, what Krishna consciousness offers us is all-round success. We'll get spiritual success, we'll develop love for Krishna, but even in this world, we will be able to use whatever talents and resources Krishna has given to the fullest potential. Otherwise, if we are internally jittery, if we have a weak, we are not able to tap our willpower, then we'll not be able to perform also properly. So I'll summarize and then we can have question answers. I started, today's topic was how free is our free will. So then I started by the point that, wise person understands that the results are not entirely in my hands. And then when we say the results are not in our hands, there are two things, the external obstacles and the internal obstacles. So a player may play very well, but then the environment, the circumstances conspire in a way that the player doesn't win the match. Or sometimes the player wants to perform well, but is out of touch, can't play well. That means internally there are some problems. So we focused on the internal problems and we discussed this acknowledgement that everybody knows, even players, they have their own superstitions by which they try to get that which is not in their power into their control. So then we discussed about, to understand these inner obstacles, we took the example of advertisements. The advertisements are there externally and then they create certain feelings on us internally. So similarly, there are internal advertisements, internal hoardings. So lust or greed is a thing as well as a feeling. The thing in terms of that, there is a mental groove which makes me go towards, which lust for things, be greedy for things, whatever. And along with that, I have those feelings which make me, which I accept and act on at certain times. Then this is because of our past karma, but can we change ourselves? Yes. The example of a array of nails and a marble going through it. By small choices according to a plan for self-improvement, over a period of time, we can see a radical change in ourselves. And we can do this by our efforts, but if we take help of God's efforts, what do we mean by God's efforts? When there are certain grooves created in the mind, then the water flows in a particular groove. Similarly, the mind's thoughts go in a particular way. But when we practice the principles given in scriptures, then we create positive grooves. So when we make a habit of chanting, a habit of studying scripture, we make a habit of taking darshan of the deities, then we are creating positive grooves which will take our thought towards Krishna. And the more our thoughts go towards Krishna, thoughts become godly, thoughts become good, and then we are able to act better.
And then in the concluding part, I discussed about when we are practicing a spiritual life, often we feel that I don't have the willpower to change. But what is lacking is not the capacity to bring about the change, it is actually the conviction, the wanting to bring about the change. And to get that, bring about that change, there has to be a constant refreshment of our commitments. When we constantly refresh our commitments, that means by regularly studying scripture, so by writing down, if I want to change, why do I want to change? And repeatedly reading that. Then, just as a plane will go off track, but we can bring it back on track. And that's how it reaches the destination. Similarly, we can move forward and reach the destination. Are there any questions? Yes, Prabhu. Where's the mic?
Prabhuji, thank you very much for a very nice explanation. Prabhuji, you mentioned in the lecture that the choices that we make, they result into grooves in our mind. Consequently, our future choices are, they act as forces which then, affect the way we choose in future. Prabhuji, in my observation, I wanted this clarification. I have seen that in our social circle or in our office environment, there are people. You also mentioned, Prabhuji, about that there are times when we are clear in our thinking, when we are enthusiastic, and when we are mohit. Prabhuji, I've seen there are people who have been making the wrong choices from our standards, like come too much into intoxication and get too much into meat eating. But it seems that the grooves are not, in their case, they are still very enthusiastic. They don't seem to be under illusion. They are still very active, at least from the materialistic point of view. And in my case particularly, if I have to share, I feel I'm not very enthusiastic, but under moha, or feeling lazy. So this, what you mentioned, that this is more like it is more like a progression. The way we act, that is how we are influenced. But when we observe other people, it seems that it is not having that impact on them, because they have been acting incorrectly since a very long time. Still, they seem to have that capacity to be active. So is it that there is more to it than just a natural progression? Is it that it is because of their past karma that even though they have acted incorrectly, they still have that strength to be active, and will they get the result in future?
Okay. So sometimes we see that people seem to have very low moral standards, and they often make wrong choices, but still they seem to be enthusiastic and seem to be able to get a lot of things done also. See, here also we have to understand that some people, by their past karma, are given certain abilities to do certain things. Now, for example, happiness and humor are not the same thing. A person may have a capacity to be very humorous. Spontaneously jokes come in the mind, the person cracks jokes and everybody laughs around. But just because a person has the capacity for humor doesn't necessarily mean that a person is happy. That person may internally have a lot of cravings, a lot of anxieties, a lot of agitations, and that humor may just be a way by which the person is trying to put a mask on it. So now the capacity for humor is a result of past good karma. But happiness actually comes by making wise choices. Now the person, if he's always thinking of things which one doesn't have and is craving for them, person may be able to crack good jokes, but the person will not be happy. So similarly, just as a person can be humorous but not happy, similarly a person may be very, we could say, greedy in one sense. But at the same time, the person may be very competent in some other things. So how does that work? That competence that is there is a result of some past good karma. For example, some people, they talk about spirituality and they seem to have such profound insights. They talk about spirituality so profoundly, but then if you look at their lives, they fall prey to terribly pathetic material temptations. That means the capacity to speak and capacity to process, that is something which they got by past karma. But actually, you can speak about God, we can talk about God also, but to develop love of God is something entirely different.
So the capacity to speak and talk, to speak about God, analyze about God, that can, or anything in general, about God or anything in general, that capacity, intellectual capacity, verbal capacity, that is a result of past good karma. But that alone doesn't make a person happy. It's actually not just the abilities that we have, but the attitudes that we develop. So now, some people may be very enthusiastic about certain things, but just enthusiasm for a thing doesn't necessarily make a person happy. If I'm enthusiastic for a wrong thing, then that enthusiasm may be mean that I'm actually, Srila Prabhupada, some people are, proudly and boldly marching towards hell. So what is happening is they're proud and they're bold, but they're going in the wrong direction. So it is possible that in some cases people have enthusiasm. So there is a saying that the problem with the world is that the foolish are cocksure and the wise are doubtful. The foolish are cocksure. People are so confident. If India wins the Champions Trophy, I'll be happy. Okay, there are so many World Cups, so many championships have come and gone, but people are ready to spend so convinced this is what happens. So they have so much confidence in that. But on the other hand, they are devotees. I'm chanting Hare Krishna. Does Krishna really exist? Or maybe I might be the body. I don't see the soul anywhere. So the foolish are confident and the wise are doubtful. Now, why does that happen? Actually, even our desire also determines our faith. If I just want to believe something, then Krishna says, you want to believe this so strongly, okay, believe it. Even if it is not true, you think by believing this and doing this you'll become happy, then I'll give you that belief. So Krishna says that, Sasya achalam shraddham tameva vidadhamyaham. When a person wants a particular kind of faith, Krishna says, I'll give that faith. 7.20 he describes this. Why? Because that's what the person wants to believe. So in such situations where we find that some materialistic people with low moral standards seem to have a lot of competence, a lot of enthusiasm, we have to understand the difference between what they are right now because of their past and what they are going to become because of their present choices. So they have certain capacities, that is because of their past karma. The capacity to process information, the capacity to analyze, the capacity to do whatever they are doing. Those are talents. Those are what they have got by their past karma. But if they are making wrong choices, now there are going to be consequences for that. Does that answer your question? Are the talents and the tendencies of the mind not correlated? They are definitely, but there is also the difference that the tendencies of the mind don't trouble a person all the time. See, for example, now there are many very, very brilliant scientists and philosophers who are brilliant in their scientific research. But if we look at their personal life, for example, Stephen Hawking is one of the biggest scientists in the world in terms of his brain capacity. Now physically he's in a very bad condition, but his brain is phenomenal. So now with that brain he has done a lot of research about physics. But then, although he's in such a case, what happened is, he was very sickly, and he had a Christian wife who was very dutifully serving him, and then assisting him he had a nurse. And from that physical condition he had an affair with his nurse. And then even his children got disgusted with him. Your wife was serving you so much, you're such a condition. Why do you have to do that? So what was the response? He said, I wanted to prove that I am a man. Such a perverse idea. That how do I prove that I am a man? By having an extramarital affair. Now this is the moral standard of a person who is considered to be one of the biggest scientific brains in the world. Now here I'm not criticizing science per se, I'm just talking about recognizing the difference between the intellectual talents that a person has and the moral values that a person has. So what happens is, when the mind comes up with its passions, it comes at certain times, and that time they just overpower a person. The person does all kinds of things. And then apart from that, The person has the intellectual talent, the person keeps using those talents. So our talents and mind's tendencies, they are different. The tendencies affect us at times, and that time they can completely grip and shake us. But there are talents, if we have certain talents, we have those talents. Somebody is a very smooth talker. Now just because the person is a smooth talker, that person by the smooth talking may be able to persuade others and get others' trust. So that smooth talking is a talent. But that doesn't mean that the person is very thoughtful or sensitive or considerate or trustworthy. So we need to differentiate between the talents that a person has and the tendencies that a person, tendencies of the mind. So Radhanath Maharaj said in one lecture that you to speak about God, to speak about God, just to memorize and speak scripture, just requires some good karma from the past life. But to actually believe in the scripture and to live the scripture requires the blessings of the great souls. So we serve Krishna, we serve the devotees, we get the blessings, and then we can believe and we can live according to what we have heard. So, of course, if somebody has the karma to speak and to memorize, they should use that karma. But we shouldn't get confused between the two things. Is it clear? Any other question? Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhuji,
Yeah. Where is the mic?
actually I had a question.
Okay, yeah.
Prabhuji, the film was about the bogus gurus. And this character who is an atheist has done as a guru. So there are 3-4 questions related to this. First of all, what is a guru? Second, who are these bogus guru? Why did the whole public have majority? Means might is right is they have majority. And third thing is that what are the qualities of the guru that should a sadhak or a disciple should look for in the guru? And fourth thing was that should we look for the intelligence, wisdom, or knowledge in the guru?
Okay. So who is actually a guru? The word guru, actually one who takes towards the light, that is a guru. So tamasoma jyotirgama, the Upanishad describe, go away from light, go away from darkness towards the light. So guru, the words gu and ru, what do they mean? This is from darkness towards light. That's what the word guru means. The word guru has many meanings. So one of the meanings is one who takes from darkness towards light. So this is referring to the darkness of matter to the light of spirit. So the guru is one who helps us to understand spiritual reality and to go towards spiritual reality. So who is an actual guru? So now if the guru is to take us towards spiritual reality, then the guru should be situated in the spiritual reality, isn't it? So the Samit Pani Shrotriyam Brahman Anishtam. So it's described that Samit Pani Shrotriyam Brahmanishtam. The Bhagavatam, the scriptures describe that the guru is situated in spiritual reality and the guru can transfer the devotee, the disciple to the spiritual reality. Now how do we know somebody is situated in spiritual reality? So that is by looking at the life of a person. So yes, we look at what the person speaks, but also how the person lives. So what a person speaks means the person is constantly talking simply about materialistic things. That person is not really situated in spiritual reality. So along with that, not the person should talk about God. And not why does the person talk about God? Because the person feels that, living in God is so much more joyful, so much more fulfilling instead of as compared to living in other things. And that's why the person wants others also to come to that level of reality. And then the person who is living in God is not attached to worldly things. That doesn't necessarily mean that the person has to live in poverty. But the idea is whatever material things a guru uses, he uses it for the service of God and to help others come close to God. So the Bhagavatam also describes the bhakti pareshanubhava viraktiranyatra cha. So bhakti is the process by which gives us para isha anubhav. That is, anubhav is experience, isha is God, para is transcendental. So para isha anubhav means what? Experience of the transcendental Lord. So actually, when Krishna is like a powerhouse of happiness, is a reservoir of happiness. When we connect with Krishna, we become surcharged with happiness. So where does this happiness come from? Through the connection with Krishna. So bhakti is the process that gives us experience of God. And now when you say experience of God, it's not that I go to a picture of Krishna and touch the feet of Krishna and I'll get some happiness. No, we can do that to get the blessings of Krishna, but the contact is through devotion. And when there is experience of God, the result is that viraktiranyatra cha, the person becomes detached from other things. Virakti. So the internal symptom of bhakti is that I experience God internally. And the external symptom is that viraktiranyatra cha. One doesn't care for other things too much. One is not attached, one is not dependent on other things. So, actually speaking, the real spiritual master is one who has experienced God. And how do we know that person has experienced God? Because that simple person simply wants to share that experience of God with others and is not really caught up in material things. And then after that, how do we know about why are there so many gurus who are fake godmen? And how do we discern between the two? Actually, there is a tremendous lack of education in the whole realm of religion and spirituality. And because of that, people are very non-discriminating in terms of understanding or evaluating what they are following. So it's like when I'm sick, I go to any doctor who catches my fancy or any person who claims to be a doctor. The problem is that often that imagine, actually when I go to a doctor, when I'm sick, I feel miserable. And then if the doctor's treatment works, I feel healthy. But if I did not know what is sickness and did not know what is health, then I would practically have no parameter of knowing whether doctor is true and the doctor's treatment is working or not. Isn't it? So, actually speaking, when people go to a spiritual teacher, they don't know what is the problem and what is the solution. So in general, most people confuse the mental to be the spiritual. What do you mean by mental to be the spiritual? They expect that if I go to somebody who just makes my mind peaceful, and that's very spiritual. So before I was introduced to ISKCON, I had gone to one spiritual teacher, spiritual in double quotes, and then he gave a talk, and after that he said that now I will offer all of you a spiritual experience. So all of us became very interested. And then he said, close your eyes, relax on your chair, imagine that you are on the banks of a river. The wind is blowing, your hair is rising, you can feel all the tension from your muscles going. Above you is the vast blue sky. There are blackish clouds moving in the sky. The river is moving gently. As the river flows calmly, your thoughts are flowing calmly. You are feeling calm, you are feeling calm, you are feeling calm. And then, so how did you feel? Calm. So that was the spiritual experience for most people. I thought, very good. Actually speaking, now, yes, if I visualize, I may feel calm. But feeling calm doesn't take away calm. So, what that means is, I can visualize and I may feel a little bit calm. But what makes me restless is my own agitating desires. So Kam, Krodh, Lobh, these are the desires. If those desires are not purified, I may feel calm by projecting my thoughts in a particular image. But after some time, those desires will again come and agitate me. So just by pacifying myself, I am not purifying myself. There's a difference between pacification and purification. If a person is a drug addict, just imagine a place where a person doesn't feel any desire for drugs, where there are no drugs and a person is very happy. You can imagine like that. But those desires for drugs are not going to go away. And that person is not going to feel free and peaceful unless that person is helped to become free from those desires. So similarly, our own uncontrolled lust, anger, greed, envy, pride, illusion, these causes agitation. And many spiritual teachers, they will speak in such a way, they will have some music, they will have some very charismatic, pleasing talk and personality, and people will feel peaceful. Yes, and then they think when they feel peaceful, they think this is spiritual. But actually, it's not spiritual. It's simply mental. So, when we actually provide spiritual education to people, when people study the Bhagavad Gita, people study the scriptures, and then they understand what spirituality actually is, then they will be able to discern. Okay, these spiritual teachers are actually here to do good to me. These people who claim to be spiritual, they're here simply to make money, simply to exploit us. And then we can have benchmarks by which we can differentiate. Is it clear? Okay, yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. It's not exactly a question, but just a reminder, like day one you said we'll be touching upon these questions which are being raised in that movie. So one point was sacrifice or yagna, whatever it is. Like in that also it says, tons of milk has been...
Okay. Yeah, actually, I have not discussed many of the questions that happen that are directly related to the movie, because my idea was that, as I mentioned in the first class only, that I had taken a Sunday program here in Radha Gopinath temple on this topic, and I had thought most of the devotees who would be coming have already attended that program. So that's why I did, this was like in one sense, an advanced session. The basic points from the movie are already covered, but yes, I can address this. Yes, in the movie, it was shown that, say, a lot of expensive cloth and other things are spent on the temples and the deities, and or say, in that way, a lot of money which could be used for humanitarian purposes is apparently wasted on God. So why does that happen? Is it right? So actually, there are two distinct issues over here. Now, when it is very curious that people become concerned for the poor only when money is spent on God. That means, when money is spent on other activities. Now, according to the UNESCO statistics, UNICEF statistics, okay, according to basically UN statistics, that the amount of money that the European Union and America spent on perfumes, that amount is so astronomical. If that money were used instead to feed poor people, then there would be no starving people anywhere in the world. Just perfumes, not even all cosmetics, not all personal care products, just perfumes. So now, why do people spend so much money on perfumes? Now, that's because people identify with the body so much. Think, I am the body, so I have to look good, I have to smell good, this. It's not that we are making campaign against perfumes over here. That's not the point here. The point is that often disproportionate amounts of money are spent on things that are non-essential. So, if we see, why don't we critique that? Or for that matter, we see that there is the whole entertainment industry, and phenomenal amounts of money are spent on it. In fact, the entertainment industry is practically one of the biggest industries in the world. Now, people, if we compare somebody watching movies and somebody spending money on watching a movie and somebody who's starving, we could say that starvation is far more a serious problem than watching a movie. And why not take even a small fraction of the money that is used on entertainment and use it for caring for the poor? That doesn't happen. So, if we see even this movie itself, which says that in religion is used to make money. There was a dialogue, Shraddha ka dhanda. You take people's faith and make money out of it. But if we see, what did OMG do? OMG was produced with 30 crores, but it made 80 crores. And the whole movie is about criticism of religion. So what was it doing? It was doing Shraddha ke ninda ka dhanda. Isn't it? So it is basically doing criticism of religion and making money out of that. So certainly the point is not that money should be wasted on anything. Actually, If we talk about money that is spent on God, what is the purpose that is served by that? So if we are concerned